Hi, my name is Irene, and I was honored to be one of the judges for Booktube Prize Semifinals Fiction Group B. I read for 2 months these 6 books, and I tried to make something like a vlog, so I talked about each book after reading it. You'll see this compilation right after this introduction, and then there will be a part about my rankings. If you are new to my channel, I want to tell first welcome, and second, English is my second language. I am Russian immigrant who live in USA 5 years, so sorry for mistakes and from stumbling on my words sometimes. I'm trying to do my best. And again, I'm honored to be here. So thank you for being here, and let's look at me reading all these books. Pool of the Stars by Emma Donoghue is a book set in Dublin in 1918 during a Spanish flu pandemic, where our main protagonist, a nurse named Julia Power, works in the hospital in the place where pregnant women come to give birth while also having a Spanish flu. This book deals with pandemic, also with women's rights at that time, when the only choice women had just to get married and give birth to 10, 12 kids without any pause. And they were giving birth until they died. And also there is one fascinating character in here who was a real life person, Dr. Kathleen Lynn, who was a female doctor, and also she fought for women's rights. She had her own clinic, and also she was a lesbian, and she had relationships with women. So it's really fascinating, very interesting character, or it could be interesting if this book was better, but it was very, very bad. I did not like this book at all. It reads like medical thriller with a lot of medical things going on all the time, one after another, without any pause. Not for the plot, but for the author wanted us to get really frightened and really understood how bad things can be during labor. I gave birth 2 times, one of them with complications for me, so I almost died during the labor. And I am not a stranger for this topic in general. You know, I have my own story, I read a lot of other stories about being in labor, but I think it's too much for one book. Spoiler, almost everyone dies in here, both babies and women. Nothing goes well in any of the labors that are described in this book. It's horrific every minute, and not because these women are sick with Spanish flu, but just because, you know, that's how things can go during the labor, but they do not do this every labor. Not every labor is that horrific. And when you read this book, it's just so traumatic experience. Too many things are happening here, and again, not for the plot sake, but just to frighten us. All other things that are happening here, and there is a lot. There is this female doctor, that's this very interesting figure, and she just have maybe 5 pages for her, maybe 10 pages for herself, so she can show up and tell something very philosophical about women's rights, and I want to know more about her, at least. Also, our main protagonist has a brother who came back from the First World War, and he does not speak now, and it was so traumatizing for him. He has problems, mental problems, and he can't speak and he can't work. And also there is this pandemic going on around, and there are quite a few pages about masks and about sanitizers and all this stuff, which is very fascinating in our age, I understand. And also there is a love story, which can be beautiful and raw and emotional if it will be more than maybe one and a half page in here. And like this is woman love story. It can be so interesting in this time. You can feel for this woman so much because you know them, but we do not have time for their love story to show itself, because author have no time in this book for it. So it's just like maybe half a page of this, and you can't believe it because it's happening like, and then it happened, and also you can't feel it, you just have no time for this. And also the ending is so cheesy, like I understand why it's happened with this book, because author have an author note at the end which tell us that she began to write these books in October 2018, and in March 2020 she brought the first draft to her publishers. Of course they have to publish it. They published it in 2 months, I think, time. So they had only 2 months from the first draft to publishing. Of course this book is just not ended right. I mean, they need to shrink this medical stuff, because it's just 2/3 of this book is medical horrific situations happening one after another, and give more space to all other aspects of the story, to characters, to relationships between them. You have none of it in this book. I understand the publishers. March 2020, it's all started to happen. The world is in horrific situation. None is like, it's so new to us. We all are so frightened. And then the author brings you a book about the pandemic, about the woman love story in the pandemic. It's perfect timing. It's like perfect timing. It's totally understandable. But it's the result of it is a book which has to be worked on maybe a year or more, and then it will be a very good book because it has all the potential. But I mean, they give it no time, and the result of it is a book that is what it is. If you like medical thrillers, if you are not pregnant, please do not read this book if you are pregnant. Do not do this, because not all of the situations in the labor room are like in this book. It can be less horrific than this. Yeah, I think this book can be really damaging for pregnant women, because it's not true. I mean, this can happen, any of the things can happen, but first, it's better not to know about this. And second, it will not happen in one day, in one room. Definitely not. I mean, no. Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. I think it's the worst book I read for Booktube Prize this year. And again, it's totally understandable. It has its right to be. I know that a lot of people like this book because they feel like it's very timely. You know, we are in the middle of pandemic, and this is a book about pandemic, and the pandemic is described very vividly in here. So it's like a reflection of our life. No. Thank you. No. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell was the only book I've read before this selection in Booktube Prize. It was my book club pick for February or March, I don't remember. This is a debut novel of a younger author, 30-something woman, who is telling the story of grooming. So this is a story about a very young girl, Vanessa. She's 15, something like that. while she was at the boarding school, she had sexual relationships with her teacher. And after many years of this relationship, which prolonged after she left the school, she read in the internet that another girl accused this teacher in sexual assault. And from that point, she began to analyze, was it a love story for her as she saw the whole life, or was it a sexual assault and she was a victim in it, while still supporting this man until he died. And then it's all became very heavy to her, and she forced to make a decision about her life, to understand what it was and what are the true values that were in her life. First, this is a debut novel, and also this novel that author claimed she wrote for 20 years, and you can feel it. The book is rather uneven, and you can see that some parts was written by a girl who was very young, and some parts were written by a woman with more experience, and these two authors had different values in life, had different values in life, and understand things differently. You can say that this is because Vanessa is an unreliable narrator, but I do think that author is an unreliable storyteller in here. These books, there is no clarity in it. Also, first author told in the beginning of the book that it's not her own story. She never had sexual relationships with her teacher. But then in social media, after certain scandal, she told that actually it was her own story, and she was sexually assaulted by the teacher. And you can see that it was her real story, because she's too emotional like an author in here, and she can't look to this story from above. She can't step aside and analyze this in any way. She's too inside the story, and also I don't think that she decided for herself, as Vanessa did not decide for herself, what was good and what was bad in this story. Author brings to the table much more questions that she can answer, or that she answered in this book. So there are questions, what's the difference between pedophile and pure love between older man and younger woman? What the difference between what is better, to be treated really badly, most physically and mentally, by a young man your age, or being treated very, very gently and lovingly, and do not do too much harm. Some harm there was, but not too much physical harm from older men. How equal are these two traumas? There is another person in this story. When she was in college, there was a teacher who was married to his later student, and to his formal student. And the question is, was it the same situation, or does the age of the younger person make big difference? So what is more important, the relationships of authority, like a teacher and a student, or a gap in the age? Also there is question about, so there is Vanessa, who is deeply traumatized, so much that her whole life was under the weight of this trauma, and she can't speak for herself. And there is this girl who made an accusation for teacher who was not assaulted at the same capacity, at the same scale, but still traumatized, and she speaks and advocates for herself and other girls, and she feels that Vanessa was wrong and not that innocent in her relationships, because she did not stop them at the same point this girl stopped. So like there are women who speak for themselves and advocate, and they are not traumatized that much, and there are persons with real big, huge trauma that can't speak for themselves, and they both think, these groups of women can think about each of this group very badly because different. I mean, this was, I think, the most interesting part of this book for me. And I began to look at the Me Too movement from the other point of view. What I can say, that I think that it's great that this book is on the market. The more people read this book, the more discussion will be held in the society, the better. Still, this book is too raw and too messy, and this unclarity of the author's position is damaging for the book. I do not think that this is a book well written, but I do think that this is still a good and interesting story and topic of discussion. So I can't say that I didn't like this book, because this book is not made for me to love or to like. This is a very hard story, but I do not think this book was well written, which can be expected from debut author. So I definitely I'm here for all Kate Elizabeth Russell will write next. I hope she will write something more, because dedicated 20 years to one book seems like a lot of effort, and I hope she will write something else. It could be a very good memoir though, like the best I've read in my whole life, and this messiness inside of it and this unclarity will only suit it well. But it's fiction, and we have to treat it like fiction, and I do not like the author's position in this fiction. Hamnet by Maggie Farrell is a novel taking place in 1580 in a small village of Stratford-on-Avon in England, where a little boy understood that his sister is not very well and is trying to find help. It is very tight, almost claustrophobic family drama, domestic drama, I'd say, about one Latin tutor's family, his wife Anne or Agnes, and her 3 kids, 2 of whom became sick with the plague, and one of them, Hamnet, and this is spoiler, but not really, because it's said in the blurb, died later in the novel. It is a novel about Shakespeare family, but we never know that this is a Shakespeare. He is always dead father or Latin tutor or teacher of Latin or something like that, and his family, who try to hold it together in these challenging times. And this is exploration of motherhood, of womanhood, of grief, of marriage, and this is a very sad novel, almost disturbingly sad. This is the first novel I've cried this year. Maybe because, death of children is very triggering to me, but this was very sad in the middle. And the end of it, the second part of this novel, where the exploration of grief after the boy's death take place, and the exploration of marriage dynamics, how it changes after this horrible event, was wonderful, touched me deeply, and I like the second part of the novel very much. This is, I can't say that I will reread it, because it's a very sad book. It really broke my heart at the second part. But, I mean, it damaged me in the right way. I really liked it. But, there is always a but. Agnes is almost our main protagonist in this novel. The novel took place in like two timelines. The nowadays 1580, when the plague came to the family, and like the year where Agnes fall in love with Leighton Tutor and married him, and birth of her children and all that. And the character of Agnes is not your typical woman. She's a witch-like woman. She has a special ability. She can touch the person and hear his thoughts and see his future. And she knows a lot about plants, and she can, prepare medicine and heal people, but not only with medicines, but with her inner powers. And I cannot understand why her character is in this way. As I understand, it was not a historical accuracy. It was Maggie O'Farrell fantasy about a strong woman in 16th century in England. But I don't think that it adds something to the story, really, because as a conclusion we can have from it, Agnes was so traumatized, so her life almost ends with her son's death, because she was so poetical, and she felt so deeply, and that's why it damaged her too much. So it almost tells us, look how she is struggling, that's because she is not a typical woman. But I mean, the death of the kid is, the worst event in every mother's life, and I don't think we need to make the woman special to show this pain. So I'm not sure about this choice of making her so witch-like, and maybe it is because she tried to heal her kids by herself without doctor's help, because doctors really couldn't do anything. They tried to put a dead toad on his stomach and pray for the better. So maybe that's why, because she made medicine for her daughter, and her daughter survived. But I'm not sure. There is a lot of magical realism in this book, too much magical realism for my taste, because the story for itself is very beautiful, and you can feel this pain and this grief, and some passages are like very hard to read. I like the choice that William Shakespeare is not like a William Shakespeare in this book, but a dad, a Leighton Tutor. I do think that if I knew the works of Shakespeare better, I can gain more from this book, because I do think that there had to be some parallels from his love story with his wife and his works, from the death of his son to his works. But of course I've read Shakespeare, but it was a very long time ago, and I do not remember it that well, so I can, parallel some quotations from Shakespeare to this book. If they are there, this book then is brilliant, because this choice of making William Shakespeare not like a famous person, I liked it very much. And because of that, I dislike the ending of this book, because at the end, Agnes goes to London to see Hamnet, a play that William Shakespeare wrote because, not because of the death of his son, but after the death of his son. Let's make it clear. And this like a happily family reunion, and she forgave him all his faults, all the women that he slept with and all the stuff, and I don't think that it was believable. I mean, of course, she's very fragile and very poetic person, but I don't think that the power of the art, the power of, you know, the theater can be that big to make this independent and well, quite modern thinking woman forgive her husband for not being with her in the grief and in, you know, bad family days. So I was not sure about these two moments, but overall, I like this book very much, and there were some pages that will stay with me for a long time. Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. For me, it was the best book I've read during this Booktube Prize. I can't say that it is without its flaws, but it's definitely a very subtle story, good character arcs, and it's good writing in it. So this is about two sisters, Stella and Desiree, who grew up in a peculiar small American town in the south, where only black people live, but black people with the lightest skin can be. So they welcome only light-skinned black people to their community, and so every other generation of kids became lighter and lighter until their skin is very light, but still they are still black people. And these two girls flew from this town one night in their teens and ended up in New Orleans, and then they split their ways. One of them vanished. That's why Vanishing Half. I didn't tell this, they're not only sisters, they're twins. So one of them vanished, and she passed as a white woman and married white man and had a white kid with blue eyes, and other one married the black man, and she had very black daughter, and she, fleeing from her very aggressive and harmful husband, returned to the hometown with her very black daughter, the only really black person in this town, who think that the lightest skin possible is the better. So this is all at the beginning of the book, so it's no spoilers here. And then you have this two-generational saga of these four women and their lives. So two sisters and their daughters who had very different lives, of course, and faced very different problems. But although some of their problems of belonging, on finding their place, of feeling that you belong to somewhere else and wanting better and different life, is united for all these characters. The only greatest flaw for me in the plot was that it was like a surprise reunion in the middle of the book, and of course it was very cheesy, like, someone see another one on the street and understand who it is and all the stuff. It was like in old Indian movies, when after many years twins see each other and understand that this is their twin. So it's a little bit cheesy in the middle, but again, it has the best characters I've read this year, very compelling and very beautifully written. Also, this has the good representation. It's the most heartwarming and beautiful transgender character in here that I've read in whole my life. I like this book a lot. And again, it has some flaws, but it's easy writing and touching important topics, and it has soul in it. You know, it's really warm and beautiful and full of emotions. From all these books, I think this is the best. Again, I can't say that it's my favorite book of the year or something, but it's not the point. Booktube Prize, it's not my favorite books. I just rank them. I think this is the best. So yes, Vanishing by Brit, Bennett, highly recommend. This video became too big and I will divide it in two parts. So this is end of the part 1, and I hope to see you in the part 2 of this Booktube Prize semifinals Group B reviews. And there you will know about my rankings and about my decision. And yeah, see you there. Bye.
Thank you.